So imagine that you're a homeowner. You're home on a Saturday morning, you hear a knock at the door, and someone, steps up to your door. It's me. I'm a solar panel salesman from Intelligent Solutions Incorporated, and I'd like to talk to you about the possibility of a solar installation on your house. I just happen to be in the neighborhood. A lot of your neighbors are getting an installation. I've taken the liberty of walking your property. I'm pleased to say that your home would qualify for our latest and greatest panels. Do you mind if I share just a few of the features of these solar panels? I didn't think so. So let me tell you, so the first thing that you should know about is our panels are really special. They will actually track the direction of sunlight throughout the day, and they'll rotate to follow the sun and maximize their efficiency. They also, you may have heard that feature from some other sellers, but ours have some other special features. For example, if they collect any rainwater or debris or anything else on the panels during the day, the panels will actually oscillate to one side or the other at night to shed all of that debris and rainwater in order to flatten out the next morning and resume resume production of energy for your home. There are also some other features. So for example, if you have some limbs on a nearby tree that start to brush up against the panels during a storm, the panels will actually protect themselves by folding up neatly into a much smaller protective shape. And there's so much more. I could go on and on, but the most important thing you should know about our panels are lifetime guaranteed. And you know what? You don't even have to call into the hotline. If anything goes wrong with one of the panels, if it's damaged in any way, the system will actually reabsorb all of the essential components of the panel, and then a few days later, it'll start growing a new panel in its place. And by this point, you're going, okay, I think I've heard of solar panels tracking the sun, but I don't know about this growing a new panel thing. You would be right to be skeptical that that kind of technology exists, right? And yet, plants all around us are producing this kind of technology in the form of leaves that can do everything I just described and much more. It's absolutely incredible, and yet it's so easy to take for granted because you're just looking at a simple leaf. It's interesting. I see somebody left some visual aids here. Oh, I'm losing most of them. So we see these leaves all around us. Thank you to whoever set these up here. And we don't realize that this technology exists all around us, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the incredible technology of plant leaves and what is happening at the biochemical level as well. So before we dive in too much, I want to ask the question you may be asking: what do plant leaves have to do with science and faith? This is a conference on science and faith. So how does this tie in? Well, I'd like to kind of propose this idea that science and intelligent design is a place where science and faith can really intersect and meet. And what I mean by that is that if you go back and you look at some of the revolutionaries of the scientific revolution, people like Robert Boyle, Isaac Newton, Kepler, Galileo, these were all men of faith who were motivated by their belief in God to go study the things that he had created. And so they considered it almost like an act of worship or an act of devotion to go out into nature and study the natural world and understand it better. There's one particular quote that I love. It's from Robert Boyle, who was a strict Sabbatarian. He respected the Sabbath, where he would rest on the Sabbath. But he wrote famously in a book called Of the Study of the Book of Nature, he said, "I scruple not, when opportunity arises, to spend some time on the Sabbath in studying the book of the creatures." He's talking about nature. "Either by instructing myself in the theory of nature or trying those experiments that may improve my acquaintance with her." Essentially what he's saying is that his study of the natural world caused him to have this awe and wonder at the one who designed it all. And so as a result, he said, I have no trouble going out and doing my scientific investigations on the Sabbath. After all, I'm essentially learning about the Creator himself and being caused to wonder at what he has made. And then on the flip side, you think about people of faith. Think about the Hebrew authors, especially David, some of his Psalms, where he's reflecting on the beauty of the natural world and how that, again, causes him to praise. This is one of my favorite passages. This is Psalm number 104. And David writes here, he says, "You cause the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for man to cultivate, that he may bring forth food from the earth and wine to gladden the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread to strengthen man's heart. The trees of the Lord are watered abundantly, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. In them the birds build their nests, the stork has her home in the fir trees. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Notice that everything he just talked about were plants, and he's calling them creatures. So I'm just saying. So you see this beautiful intersection where the study of the natural world causes you to have awe and wonder for the Creator, and one's faith in the Creator causes one to go investigate the way that he has designed things in the natural world. And so that's why I think that intelligent design is this beautiful place where the two kind of come together. Now, when I said earlier that leaves are like solar panels, and I made this analogy, you may be thinking, okay, essentially there's some ways that they're similar, but are they really that similar? Well, let me just give you a basic description of what a solar panel is. You could describe a solar panel as a large array of photovoltaic cells that use direct sunlight to raise the energy states of electrons, thereby creating an electron current, which gives rise to the potential energy in the form of electricity, okay? Just a basic definition of what a solar panel is doing. Now look at the highlighted words that I have there. If I were to replace those green and yellow words on the screen, you would have a really good description of a leaf, of a plant leaf. A plant leaf could be described as a large array of living plant cells that use direct sunlight to raise the energy states of electrons, thereby creating an electron current which gives rise to potential energy in the form of simple sugars. It is a very similar technology in many ways in terms of what it's accomplishing, and Emily will give us a little bit of a peek into how it's using electron flow to accomplish this energy conversion. But you may also be asking, okay, so conceptually, a leaf is similar to a solar panel, but surely anatomically they're quite different. Well, sure, but there's actually some similarities. If you've seen a cross-section of a solar panel like this one, you've seen that it's got several layers of different materials, all that accomplish different purposes. It's got an aluminum frame, a silicon seal, a layer of glass. It's got the solar cells. It's got, of course, wires that are conducting the electrical energy from place to place. And when you look at the cross-section of a leaf, you see a similar thing. You see an arrangement of particular materials or cell types that are each accomplishing a different function for this technology. So at the top of the leaf, you have a waxy cuticle, this protective covering. You have the upper epidermis. In the middle, in the mesophyll section, you have the palisade cells where photosynthesis is largely taking place with its chloroplasts. You have the vascular bundles, which are essentially like the wires of a solar panel conducting material back and forth in the plant. And then the lower epidermis with all the stoma or pores that allow gas exchange with the environment. It's an incredible technology. It relies on each of these different cell types to do exactly what they were designed to do. And the amazing thing is that you don't just see that there's this one leaf type in the world and that somehow, evolution can explain how we ended up with this beautiful canonical leaf. What you actually see is that every unique environment around the planet has a different leaf type that's specially designed for that climate, for that environment. And so what I just showed you is kind of like a typical canonical leaf, but if you look in all these different environments, I've just shown a few on the screen, you'll actually see that there's a different type of leaf design for each environment. So let me just give you an example. Conifers, pine trees, any kind of needle tree has several adaptations or designs that allow it to survive in, for example, the tundra, a very harsh environment for the typical leaf. For example, these trees actually produce antifreeze proteins that lower the melting temperature of water to allow them to survive in these environments. They have a rounded leaf that allows snow and ice to slide off more easily. It has a waxy cuticle all the way around the leaf, so not just on the top surface, but all the way around the needle to protect it from that freeze-thaw cycle. And you could go on and on and on. And then you compare with something like an arid environment where you have pineapples, for example. Pineapples are a cam plant. They have specialized organelles in their cells that allow the plant to open up their pores only at night, to take in as much carbon dioxide as they can, to use that carbon dioxide to store carbon And then during the day, they close their stomata so that they don't lose any oxygen to the heat of the day. And then they slowly work through that carbon dioxide reserve to power photosynthesis during the day. So no matter where you go on planet Earth, no matter what the environment, the climate, you will find a specialized design in plant leaves. And so one verse that comes to mind for me is in the Hebrew scriptures in Genesis 1, it says that each plant was created according to its kind, and it produced seeds according to its kind. So the challenge when you're studying plants is not to say, how did plants come about? How did we end up with leaves? That would be too easy. The question is, how did you end up with every single one of these? Each of these designs specialized for their environment. Another dimension to the design of leaves that's incredible is the fact that they're constantly sensing their environment. So if we go back to that slide where it's showing the sensitive plant, you can see in this little animation that this particular plant, when you touch the leaves, when it feels the pressure of an herbivore reaching into its branches, it will quickly close its leaves, similar to what I was saying with the solar panel being able to fold up its panels. It will close its leaves to create the illusion that there's really nothing to see here, nothing to munch on, and the herbivore will then move along to a juicier looking plant. And you see this throughout the plant world, that that leaves are able to sense what's going on in their environment. Another example that some of you may be familiar with is the prayer plant. It's a common household plant. And there have been several studies recently that showed that the movement called nyctinisty, the movement of prayer plant leaves throughout the day and night, accomplishes several functions for the plant. For example, shedding rainwater that is collected in the rainforest during the day, shedding the rainwater at night so that the leaves can turn upright during the day and continue photosynthesizing. And one of my favorite examples comes from a study that I did of quaking aspen. It's a very important tree. It's a food source for Rocky Mountain elk, and it's a clonal species, which means that it propagates through the roots, and so you can have an entire stand of quaking aspen the size of this room or larger that's genetically identical. It's basically a single organism connected through the roots. And one of the things we studied was the way that quaking aspen can respond to the environment by sensing whether it was being eaten by insects, whether it was being eaten by something like an herbivore, a deer, an elk, or whether it was in an environment that was largely free of herbivores. And it would have a different response. So for example, if insects were feeding on the leaves, it would start producing new leaves that had a high tannin content, a chemical compound that would turn away the insects, basically. It's impalatable to the insects. And so that would be its response to insect herbivory. If, on the other hand, the plant decided or could sense that it was being fed on by something like a deer, well, there's no good in producing more tannin. The deer will just chew right through that. What the plant instead will do, it'll shoot up a new leader. So if we're talking about the young trees, it'll shoot up a new leader until it gets about 6-7 feet tall, just above the browse height of a deer, and then it will branch out and start producing new leaves. So it can sense the danger and start producing leaves at a safe height. And then in an environment where you have neither of those things going on, it will follow kind of a normal growth pattern and really flourish in that environment. So it's amazing that the leaf is doing a lot of what the solar panel is doing, but so much more, right? It's also sensing and responding to its environment. And then just a few more examples here. When I say leaves are solar panels, but also so much more, think about what else the leaf is accomplishing. So let me give you a few examples. Leaves often take on a particular shape. Sometimes we mistake them for flowers because they're very ornate leaves. And one example is the bee orchid that actually mimics the female bee, so that a male bee will come to the flower and pollinate and spread from flower to flower and help it propagate. Another example is transpiration. The leaf is actually as it's taking in oxygen from the environment, it's also evaporating water. And what that allows the plant to do through capillary action is actually to pull water all the way from the ground, through the roots, up the tree. It could be a 300-foot tall tree, and it will passively pull water from the ground using this process of transpiration. And that's all happening because of the design of the leaf, because of how it's designed for gas exchange. And I could go on and on with all these incredible examples. If we have time in the Q&A, ask me about disguise and plants that have been discovered that can actually disguise themselves as other plants, an incredible feat that we still don't quite understand. And then, of course, the plant is doing so much more even for the environment. It's capturing carbon out of the atmosphere, which is very important for maintaining the climate. It's producing tons of food material. It's regenerating the soil. It's producing shade for larger organisms. And then the incredible thing, the coup de grace, so to speak, of this technology that we find in leaves is that if you compare it to human technology, it's like the holy grail of sustainable technology because it's renewable. It's using basically infinite solar power to run all this technology. It's recyclable, meaning all of the material that it produces in these leaves can also be pulled back into the plant and reused in the production of new leaves through a process of senescence. And it's what we call zero residue. Basically, it means there's no waste. Any of the plant material that falls to the ground, leaves, limbs, etc., all of that very quickly becomes part of the soil and part of the ecosystem. And so, again, it's amazing when you compare a leaf to something like a solar panel. It's amazing to see that it's accomplishing a lot of the same things, but also so much more, well beyond anything we could imagine. It's like me trying to sell you a solar panel, and then at the end of my sales pitch saying, oh, I forgot to mention this solar panel is also a whole house air conditioning unit and a missile defense unit and all sorts of other things, right? Like, what an incredible thing that this one technology can accomplish so many things.